Space Commander.
Houston, this is 0920. This is 0920. How do you copy? Over.
Say again. We did not copy your last transmission.
I said release the moon.
Be advised, we cannot hear you through your space helmet.
I'm using a Space Commander Walkie-Talkie.
We recommend you open your helmet visor. Open your helmet visor.
Roger.
This is a Lafayette Space Commander walkie-talkie that I just purchased from eBay for $20. Now the coolest thing about this box is that the graphic wraps completely around it. There were no other walkie-talkies sold by Lafayette that had a graphic like this. Here's our astronaut speaking into his Space Commander walkie-talkie, and there's this Gemini space capsule. Why is a Gemini space capsule in orbit around the moon? Speaking of the moon, there is the surface of the moon. Now that capsule can't land on the moon. You know, it seems kind of ludicrous, but there were indeed plans to send a Gemini space capsule into orbit around the moon and possibly even land on the moon if we thought the Russians were going to beat us. I have to be careful opening this box. This radio was made in the late 60s or early 70s, which means it's about a half a century old. Here's a warranty card. If this doesn't work, you know what I'll do? I'll fill out this warranty card and send it back and get a brand new one. It comes with a manual. Now, it's the HA70C, not to be confused with the HA70D, which was similar, but it didn't look as cool. So now let's open the box and see if it agrees with the picture. Wow, that thing is gleaming. It's hurting my eyes. It looks pretty much unused. Of course, if it wasn't in real good shape, I wouldn't have purchased it. The antenna's in good shape. That's one thing you always have to watch for, because those antennas end up getting bent or broken, especially if kids are using them. Well, whoever used this one didn't use it very much. Now, this is hard to read. It basically says that the walkie-talkie complies with FCC Part 15, meaning it doesn't need a license because it's only 80 milliwatts. Now, that thing is cool. I'd like to do something with this box, like put it in a picture frame. Now, I suppose I could slice the box down the seam and spread it out. But I have a better idea. I can get the graphic off this box without damaging the box in any way. Now that the box is scanned, we've got 4 cropped images of the sides of the box. And we're going to bring them into a photo editing program named Photo Impact. This program is about 20 years old, but I still use it. So the first thing we need to do is expand the canvas on the right side. And we need to do this because we're going to copy and paste the other 3 images in there. Now we'll bring up the next image. Copy it. Paste it. And then line it up. And we'll do this with the next 2 images. You can see that there are a lot of defects in the picture. Most of these are from the box. The box is 50 some years old and it has a little bit of wear and tear on it. So what we'll do is use the cloning tool and we'll try to repair some of this stuff. Now I'm going to copy this spot here onto this spot here. It looks like I'm fixing the drawing, but all I'm doing is copying some good parts onto some bad parts. I can fix this scratch here. Where you see the square is where it's copying from. Now I'll copy this part here down onto this part here. And like magic, it gets fixed. I'll come up here and take out this scratch. I'll take out that scratch. There's another scratch. And you get the idea. So you just keep plugging away at this, repairing all the little defects in the drawings. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. I think I spent a couple of days on this. I'd sit down with a cup of coffee and fix the picture a bit and then leave and go do something else for a while. So when you get all done, you have something like this. Now it looks pretty good, but it doesn't look great. So I'll show you something interesting. Bring up your level control and increase the black level. Now it looks good. It looks good enough to put into a frame, which is what I did with mine. I bought the picture frame at a thrift store, but I had to cut an inch off the bottom to fit the picture, which was pretty simple to do. But when I went to cut an inch off the bottom of the glass for the frame, I broke the glass. Now, it's not that I don't know how to cut a piece of glass. It's because this stupid glass cutter is a piece of crap. Ah, 'tis a poor craftsman that blames his tools. I replaced the piece of glass with a piece of clear plastic. Now it's time to open the Space Commander and put a battery in it and see if it works. I'm going to put a carbon battery in here because a carbon battery is what would have been in there in the 1970s. Now carbon batteries are getting hard to find for some reason, but I bought this brand, Piss Cell. Very unfortunate translation into English, I guess. But I looked at reviews for these Pistcell brand batteries, and they were all good. So I bought a whole box of them. Okay, this is very encouraging. Well, it seems to receive just fine, but does it transmit? The crystal is marked 27035, and in a remarkable coincidence, that just happens to be channel 7 on your CB radio dial.
But you told me to tell B.A. good job.
We're going to tune this shortwave radio to 27035. Well, it certainly sounds like we're transmitting. I do not hear my voice coming out of the radio. Houston, we've had a problem. Hello, Houston. Houston, do you copy? Over. This is the schematic diagram of the walkie-talkie. Now, everything I say after this, take it with a grain of salt, because it could be wrong, and probably is. Let me explain here that in this schematic, the radio is in the receive position. There are 6 switches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A 7th switch here is the on-off switch. These dotted lines go up to the symbol for the volume control, and the dotted lines designate that the on-off switch and the volume control are the same control. Now, all the other switches are the push-to-talk switch. So I've edited the drawing. This is in the receive position, and that's the transmit position. So in the receive position, the signal comes in through the antenna, goes through a coil, through this capacitor, and is fed into this coil, which is labeled tank. The output goes into the base of transistor TR1. Now, the transistor and the tank coil make a simple super regenerative radio receiver. The output comes down here and goes into the volume control. From the volume control, it goes through another resistor, a capacitor, and is fed into the base of TR2, where it's amplified. It then goes through a matching transformer, through another capacitor, and into the base of TR3, where it's amplified more. It then comes out of transistor TR3 into a matching transformer for the speaker, and the sound comes out of the speaker. Now we've pressed the push-to-talk switch, and we are in transmit mode. You speak into the speaker, which is acting as a microphone. An electronic rendition of your voice exits the speaker and is fed into the base of transistor TR2, where it's amplified. It exits TR2, goes through the matching transformer, and into transistor TR3, where it's amplified again. The amplified version of your voice is then fed into the base of transistor TR1. TR1 and the tank coil and the crystal are now operating as a radio transmitter, with your voice modulating the transmitter. The signal exits TR1, goes through the tank coil, through a loading coil, out the antenna, and into what they used to refer to as the luminiferous ether. We've got a bit of an odd problem with this walkie-talkie, the symptom being that it appears to be transmitting, but it won't transmit a voice. The reason it's an odd problem is because most of the components in the walkie-talkie are being used, whether it's transmitting or receiving, and we know it's receiving. Now, the exception is this resistor here, and this capacitor here, and the crystal. Now, if the crystal went bad, I think it would still transmit, and it would definitely not stop your voice from coming through. So an obvious course of action would be to clean these switches, which I did, and it didn't help anything. Now, the radio has 4 electrolytic capacitors, 1, 2, 3, 4. And these are notorious for going bad, being as the unit is 50 years old, and they're in the cheapest product that Lafayette probably ever sold. I think the best course of action would be to replace the 4 capacitors. Let's see what these components look like in real life. Here's the antenna. Here's the speaker, the push-to-talk switch, 2 transformers. This coil here is marked tank in the schematic diagram. Over here is the crystal, and then we have the on-off switch and the volume control. There are 3 transistors, 1, 2, 3, and 4 electrolytics, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, that took about an hour. Now, let's test these old capacitors. First, we'll test the 50 microfarads. And it's reading 60 microfarads. Well, that wasn't causing the problem. Next, we'll try one of the 30s. 30 microfarad. Unknown or damaged part. Okay, this one's dead. Now we'll test the other 30 microfarad capacitor. Testing. Testing. Unknown or damaged part. Also dead. And finally, we'll test the 5 microfarad capacitor. Okay, this is a little weird. It's reading 8,679 nanofarad, which is about 8.6 microfarad, so it's reading high. I don't know why the tester's being so exact, but this capacitor wasn't part of the problem. The problem was the 230s. I should have replaced the 30s with 33s, but I didn't have any, so I used 22s. You know, when people find out I'm not a very good electrician, they're shocked. Walkie-talkie test. walkie-talkie test. Houston, this is Gemini 20. We are in orbit around the Earth's moon. Do you copy? Over. Hello, Houston, do you read? All right, well, 10-4, Roger Wilco, over and out, and other CB-related jargon. Success. After 50 years, almost as good as new. I had an Astro Commander when I was a teenager. I bought it so I could talk to my friend Charlie. Charlie had a base station, a 5-watt base station with an antenna on the roof. Now I could hear Charlie on the Astro Commander, but Charlie couldn't hear me. And he pointed out, quite correctly I think, that the little 9-volt battery couldn't possibly produce enough current to put any kind of meaningful signal on the air with the walkie-talkie. And he suggested I make a battery pack. So here's a 5 battery pack. All the batteries are in parallel. So it's still 9 volts, but we can push 5 times the current through the walkie-talkie. So we'll strap the battery pack onto our Astro Commander, and we'll go outside and see if anyone can hear us. It's the Astro Commander with the 5X battery.
Did he say he could not turn the Agena off?
No, he says he is separated from the Agena and he's in a roll and he can't stop it. His rate pressure is down.
Break over here. I'd like to mention 3 things before the video ends. First, the Space Commander was also called the Astro Commander. The price never went beyond $5.99. Instead, they came out with the version HA70D, which had fewer parts. Secondly, if you Google something like Gemini to the moon, you'll find a lot of very interesting information about actual plans that they had to send a Gemini space capsule around the moon, and some really far-out plans to land a Gemini capsule on the moon. And third, there's a link to the graphic under the video. I don't recommend that you print this with an inkjet printer. If you don't have a LaserJet, put the graphic on a thumb drive and take it to the drugstore. Use the machine at the drugstore to print out a photograph.